Hello everybody and welcome to another video. In this video we're gonna be talking about Trench Crusade. Is the hype real? What is it? And is it really a Warhammer 40k killer? Let's have a little look at it. Yes, so this is a video I wasn't ultimately expecting to make. I've had this sort of some content come across my feed, which kind of got me looking at it, and this wasn't planned or expected. So basically, Trench Crusade, it is a video that is sort of a game that's sort of come out of really nowhere, but it really hasn't. It's kind of been around for the past at least 2 years or so, in various little circles, and it's kind of sort of now got into Kickstarter, where it's made, I believe, $3.3 million on Kickstarter, and we're going to have a little look at the Kickstarter page in a second. But there's a lot of things being talked about it, and one of the things that we're going to go into straight away, we're going to look at what it is and kind of how this sort of happened and where it sort of first sort of popped its little head up. But let's have a little look at the actual Kickstarter itself. Let's have a little look-see, and there we go. So the Kickstarter itself is here. So it's all done and dusted. It's all finished. It raised 3.3 million, and it had 20,000 backers, which is a pretty good slab of backers. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room straight away. So you may have noticed that certain content creators of the former Games Workshop employee and the kind of anti-Games Workshop type content creator has now started to talk about this game in any form of sense. Now, you have other content creators like some Major Kill, but they'll generally talk about anything wargame related anyway. And generally, because this is like kind of a big thing, is sort of, it's made 3.3 million. There are other war games out there that have made substantial amount of money. The Song of Ice and Fire game by Cool Mini or Not made millions of dollars, and even the other skirmish game with the big massive dragon, Drogon, in the sort of collector's edition, made a couple of million as well. This isn't the first time a miniature game has made this type of money. Dark Souls from Steamforged Games broke records and made millions of dollars. In fact, it changed Steamforge's entire company makeup and business model to the point where they literally become a Kickstarter exclusive game company and just rolled out IPs and Kickstarters constantly. Now, Trench Crusade has been around for a bit. I remember first hearing about it a few years ago, when it sort of first started being talked about, and you can imagine that these talks were sort of done in and around sort of the 3D printing crowd and the alternative 40k crowd. It was then sort of pushed and promoted a little bit and talked about by not very nice content creators such as Artcast. We all know who that knob cheese is. And it kind of sort of gave a little bit of attraction by the anti-GW crowd. More so once the whole fiasco with the female custodies came in. A lot of it was said about Trench Crusade, and a lot of people were kind of mocking the anti... I don't even know how to word what these are. Chuds, I believe, is what they kind of get referred to as. You know, the ones that kind of like get a little bit weirded out when things change in games, or girls get brought into it. So yeah, it was kind of sort of like brought up in that conversation as an alternative to 40k, when in reality, when we look at it, it is very much not what this game is. And yeah, and it kind of is been heavily promoted by the anti-DW crowd. I've noticed a number of content creators have made reference to it, from likes of Rogue Hobbies, Preachy, you know, all the way down to Discourse Miniatures. You know, you kind of get the vibe of the content creators that are latching onto this because of what it essentially is, and it's been dubbed the 40k killer, which, let's just talk about that now. It's not going to be. Like, this game is not going to touch 40k in any sense of the imagination, and it's not even in the same league. I wouldn't even class this game as a sort of comparison to 40k, where you could sort of look at Kings of War and go, that is clearly a direct comparison to Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and like their Vanguard game being a sort of skirmish element of a game a little bit like Age of Sigmar, whereas this isn't. There's very little other than the grim dark style, which is still evident in 40k and in Age of Sigmar and the Old World and the Horus Heresy. It's still there. This kind of leans heavily into that sort of grim, dark sort of element. And there's a lot of sort of things in this that sort of really like speak out. But we're going to jump in and have a little look. So here's the Kickstarter page straight away, and there's some of the artwork. So what is this game? It's essentially, by looking at the factions and the miniatures, it's basically a sort of alternative World War One game where heaven and hell are having a war on Earth, setting 1914 when World War One breaks out, and it's essentially basically God versus the devil, essentially. So you kind of get the sort of vibe. You know, you've got that sort of real sort of trench warfare type thing, and obviously, you know, Death Corps of Krieg coming out. I imagine Death Corps of Krieg are going to sell very well because of people wanting to play this game are going to want to use the Death Corps of Krieg miniatures. So win-win for GW there straight away. So it is kind of, you know, made by some pretty big names. You've got Mike Fantini, who's got like Diablo 1, 2, and 3, and 4, Path of Exiles, Magic the Gathering under his belt. Again, I've played none of those games apart from dabbled a bit in Magic and found it horrible. Tumas, who made Mordheim and Warhammer 6th edition, probably one of the best editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and Mordheim is a great game. And then James Sheriff, who is just a fantastic sculptor. And there's a lot of cool artists. Like, there's like John Blanche who's been involved in this in the art. You know, there's just so many artists that I've worked for Games Workshop in the past, and I've worked for other companies who have also have jumped in on this as well. So we've got the factions. So we've got obviously the Trench Pilgrims, the Heretic Legions, the New Antioch, which is like the Bible Thumpers, the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent, which is, you know, hell, the demons, the bad guys. Then we've got the Sultan of the Iron Wall, no idea, and the Black Grail. And you kind of get a vibe from the artwork straight away of like, this is like really, it's kind of sort of like channeling that 1980s inner sort of craziness which we kind of got in that time, and which is kind of cool. But one of the things that I will point out straight away about the game, and the rules are available for free on the Kickstarter page right now if you want to head over and have a look at it. This is not the same game as 40k. Like, 40k is a squad-based skirmish game, according to Games Workshop. It really isn't. It's a mass battle game. This is a model-by-model activation game. It's very much akin to things like War Machine, where you're moving models and units around. And it's alternative activation, which is, again, a lot of what people want. And it's kind of a little bit different. It kind of has an interesting rules. And as somebody who likes writing rules, I kind of like read them and was like, ooh, pretty interesting. So there is some pretty cool elements to it. But it's straight away, I'm going to say that this game doesn't really share any similarities to 40k or Age of Sigmar in regards to how the games work. It's like, you know, it's more Necromunda, Mordheim scale rather than 40k fantasy Age of Sigmar-esque. So like you're basically playing with like a small amount of models, and as you can see, got some nice pictures of measurements and everything else, and dice rolls and how it all works, and you kind of get a feel for some of the craziness in regards to the miniatures. Now, straight away, you will notice that some of the miniatures in this game have a very distinct look. And one of the things I will say straight away on this is, like, this kind of doesn't have a science fiction feel to it, whereas 40k has. This has a very heavy sort of fantasy meets a bit of science fiction meets a bit of horror, slammed in together, and you've got it. So like the Anointed with an axe, that's a Chaos Warrior with an axe. You know, the Warwolf is a big demon monster thing. The Sin Eater is a very sort of Space Marine-esque big guy that would kind of work really well in a Death Guard army. You've got, like, you know, your Chaos Cultists guys down at the bottom. You've got your Heretic Legions. You've got your Anointed, which, for me, when I looked at these, I was like, wow, this is like the church-loving faction from what's it called, from Privateer Press, that weird game that everyone played with the Warjacks. And them and World War One mixed together, but you've still got that weird-esque vibe to it. So yeah, you know, I had a massive brain fart there, but you know, you kind of get that. And then when you go to like these guys, like literally the Hell Knights are literal Chaos Warriors. Like that is a Chaos Warrior straight out of fantasy. The Praetor is a giant demon prince Chaos Warrior. The Hell Knights is a Chaos Warrior running around with a gun. The Yoke Fiend looks like something you would see in a Nurgle army. Same with these guys down the bottom. So there's a lot of things that you can sort of look at it and go, wow, you know, this is like old school Warhammer Fantasy rather than Warhammer 40k. You know, I'm seeing some references to sort of 40k, but I'm seeing more Warhammer Fantasy vibe here than anything else. And one of the things as well is it kind of also screams Kingdoms of Death, that really bespoke sort of board game that was out a couple of years ago that everyone went mental for. It kind of really sort of screams that as well. So, you know, like really crazy type of miniatures. Now, obviously, this is all 3D printed. You can do the Kickstarter, get access to the files and all of that kind of stuff. And, you know, you can really sort of go to town on that, like the Brazen Bull. What the hell? Wow, that's pretty cool. So yeah, you've got some pretty cool factions. There's 6 factions in total. They all have printable files, and yeah, so you've got them. The Black Grail, which I assume are sort of weird demon-y things, but like the Plague Knight here, this guy right here, the Plague Knight, again, it screams Warhammer Fantasy. It, you know, there's a lot of vibe for that model to the Cities of Sigmar Arcanite model that came out as an anniversary model. There's a lot of similarities between the two. You know, so yeah, I'm definitely seeing more fantasy. So we got the physical miniatures, some of the craziness that people have made, the book, all of the different sort of add-ons and stuff that you could have in during the campaign. The little war bands. So you know, this is basically roughly what I think you're going to have model count wise on the tabletop. You know, you're not going to have very many models. You know, this game isn't going to be like, you know, you're not going to be playing like, you know, 50, 60 models like you are in 40k or Age of Sigmar. And, you know, if you're a big 3D printer enthusiast, you're going to get to do that. So, yeah, this is essentially Trench Crusade. And, yeah. So, is it the big bad? Is it going to hurt Games Workshop and Warhammer 40k? Not really. We've already seen from the initial reports coming out from GW's financials that GW are smashing when it comes to the licensing and things like that. Space Marine 2 is like, I think nearly 5 million or just over 5 million sales already on all 3 platforms. Games Workshop are making stupid amounts of money. 40k is becoming more mainstream. A lot of people criticizing 40k for being diluted and not as grimdark. I still think it's grimdark. I still think there's an element of nastiness in the setting. I don't agree with people saying that the Space Marines are being portrayed as these heroes. They always have been portrayed as these heroes, but they are now getting a little bit more polish. Yes, maybe. Is that to make them more marketable? Probably, but Space Marines always have been, and have been the biggest appeal for 40k for the last 30 plus years. I know as myself as a Space Marine fanboy, like anything in power armor, I'm going to get, chuffed on and get really excited about it because it's Space Marines. It's what brought me into the hobby as a kid, and it's what's keeping me in as a 45-year-old man, still loving them. And I love Space Marines. They're just so cool. So that's my bag. That's my jam. That's what I like. So yeah, it's I don't think this game is going to cause any issues to GW or any issues to 40k as a whole. It will appeal to a certain element and demographic of gamer. You will get the vast majority of the people that play Trench Crusade will be gamers who absolutely love the setting, absolutely love the vibe, and absolutely love the gameplay. And they will be all over it like a fat kid in a sweet shop. Then you have the other element of the game, and they are the ones that are going to be playing it and promoting it and talking about it so much because they're the ones that just seem to have this weird thing that they kind of think that they're doing Games Workshop damage. They're the idiots like Discourse Miniatures who will actively promote and spend money on Games Workshop products, but still shit on Games Workshop as every opportunity she can because somehow she's doing something good. It doesn't make sense. If you don't like Games Workshop and you don't like their products, stop promoting their games. Stop talking about them. Stop doing anything about them. Don't put your hand in your pocket and give them money. Even if you are actively 3D printing your army, but still playing their game, you're still supporting them. Because you might be at your local gaming club or your local store or indie store or whatever, and you might have your little crowd of anti-GW players playing 40k with all of your 3D printed models, and somebody who's never ever seen 40k before walks in that door and goes, "What is that?" And you're like, "Oh, we're playing 40k, mate." "Oh, cool. What's that then?" The first thing they're going to do is Google Warhammer 40k. You are now introducing that player to 40k and Games Workshop. Where are they going to go to get it? They're going to go to Games Workshop. So, this whole mindset of, yeah, I'm sticking it to the man because I'm not buying their mod. Yeah, you fucking are. Yeah, you are. You simply are. You are still promoting them. So if you don't like it, just don't do it. Just don't do anything with them. Don't promote it. I don't really like Steamforged Games after what they did with Guild Ball. I don't want to buy their models. I don't want to play their games. I don't want to give them any money. And I don't. I could play Guild Ball. I could 3D print everything. There is a third-party market out there. And I could get all my teams and I could get all of my second-hand stuff and I could play the game. But the problem is, I could essentially put somebody into them that has never played it or is like, "Ooh, what's this? This is cool. This is interesting." And off they go on top and they start giving Steamforged Games money. And I would rather not do that after what they did. That's how you do not support a company. Don't support them with your wallet. And that's exactly what people need to do with Games Workshop if you don't agree with what they do. But, yeah, so that's probably what's going to happen with this game. I hope it is massively successful. One of the things I am interested in seeing happen with Trench Crusade is what's going to happen to the game in a year's time. Now, not this year, not until next year, because for the next 12 months, they're going to be entirely focused in on the Kickstarter. So they're going to be getting everything out, getting everything to their backers and everything else. I'm talking about that year after the Kickstarter is fulfilled. That year of moving to retail. That is what I'm interested in. I want to see what happens to the game then. I want to see how the developers and the writers and the creators of the game start bringing the game into life, start expanding on their original ideas, and start expanding on the game and the factions that are in there. Because this, at the moment, kind of feels like they've kind of pulled ideas from everywhere and mashed it together to create something that's kind of cool, but doesn't really have an ultimate identity of its own. Like, you can look at that and you can see elements from so many different things. Like, there's like Silent Hill vibes in some of the miniatures. There's so many influences and everything else that they've taken from everywhere else, which is so cool, and it's so creative, and it's really nice to see. But I want to see what it's going to be like a year or two after release, after it's in the shops, once they've sort of got down and they've got a real plan and a vision of where they want to take the game long term. And that's going to be the interesting part with it. So one of the things I'm definitely looking forward to that is of how that's going to pan out. And I think that's going to be an interesting time. I think the game will probably get some really interesting miniatures. And it would be nice to see if it kind of moves out of the 3D niche, which it is, I think, firmly embedded into, and maybe has sort of like a mainstream sort of miniatures released on stores where you can actually buy them. Because not everybody is into 3D printing. I'm not into 3D printing. A lot of people aren't. 3D printing is a niche hobby inside of itself. So it would be really kind of cool to sort of see this on the shelves in your local hobby stores, where like people like myself can go in and go, ooh, Trench Crusade, a little gander at that, rather than just like, yeah, it's 3D printing, I'm not even interested. I'm not even going to entertain that idea because, one, I don't have the space for 3D printing. Two, I just don't have the mental capacity of wanting to do it and learning entirely new skills. And because, you know, it's not as easy as people make it out to be. And, you know, yeah, I'm not interested in that. Now, I could, to do things like those axes and helmets and stuff, buy a filament 3D printer, because that kind of is cool, and there's very little prep work afterwards. You know, I don't need to wash my miniatures, I don't need to cure them, I don't need 3 or 4 different machines to sort of do all of that. I can just print on the filament and then do my sanding and smoothing, and then I can paint it and have cool stuff. And terrain, you can have some cool terrain for your tabletop games, which is kind of cool. So that's the kind of element of 3D printing I like and will possibly maybe move into, because small printers like the Bamboo Lab 1 looks like affordable, but the actual resin miniatures and all that kind of stuff just does not interest me in the slightest. And it's a shame, because games like Trench Crusade might be good, but it's all cool. But that's Trench Crusade. So if you haven't really checked it out, I'll have a link below for the Kickstarter page. I imagine they're going to do a late backers kit, probably. And if you want to check it out, feel free to do so. Let me know what you think of it. What do you get from the vibes? You know, I wish it all the best. I really do. I wish the creators of it all the best. I'm definitely intrigued to see where it goes. Will it kill 40k? Will it fuck? And yeah, it's going to be pretty awesome. So let it do its thing, and let it cook. And yeah, and that's the video. So if you like what I do, please like, subscribe, and share on all of that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next video, where we'll get back to 40k and Age of Sigmar and the old world and all of that good stuff. Catch you later, peeps. Goodbye for now.